Hello again. So this is video number 7. So this is a team that I like. This team I usually grade this team usually around where I'm grading them tonight. So this ought not be a very big surprise. It's Andre. So yeah, let's dive into Andre's draft. So first round, 6th pick, we took Derrick Henry. I know you are high on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was taking the pick before you, but it's okay, we got Derrick Henry. So what do we think of Derrick Henry? So Derrick Henry is a weird one. Derrick Henry ended the season very, very well. And Derrick Henry started the season very, very well. The in-between was a little rocky, but not that bad. The thing about Henry is obviously more so than I guess any other running back really in the top half of the league. So top 16 running backs, we'll say, except for I guess Fournette, if you consider him a top 16 running back. I'd have to think about it, but he relies heavily on rushing, but he's not much of a pass catcher. So last year he led the NFL in carries, he led the NFL in rushing yards. He was the rushing yard champ with 1,540. And he had the most rushing touchdowns with 16. Obviously, Aaron Jones had 19, and I believe Christian McCaffrey had 19 as well. So, but Henry got the most on the ground. He is really, really difficult to take down when he gets ahead of steam. That's why he was drafted out of Alabama, and he's been no lower than 3rd in yards per carry the last 3 years, I want to say. He's 25, so same age as Leonard Fournette, and there is some worry because last year was obviously a very good year for him, but it's a very high number of carries, 303 carries, there we go. A lot of workload, plus the 18 receptions, which is a career high. It's not much, though, and we're basically hoping he can keep that up. So, personally, it's tough because I would have taken Clyde Edwards-Helaire if he'd fallen this far. I didn't really want to take Eckler or Sanders. I would have considered Josh Jacobs possibly, just because he catches the ball as well, or maybe even Dalvin Cook because Cook's going into a big year this season. I think Henry was the safest pick, however, just because we know the offense is not going to deviate too much. I don't know if he'll get as much workload as last year. 16 touchdowns is a lot. I'm expecting touchdown regression from Christian McCaffrey. I'm expecting touchdown regression from Aaron Jones. I'm expecting touchdown regression from Derrick Henry because 16 touchdowns is a touchdown a game. So I don't know about that, but that's okay. He can still be a top almost 5 back, basically doing what he's doing. Well, I don't know if he'll lead the league in rushing. I picked Zeke for this exact reason. I think Elliott will lead the league in rushing. But 1,300 yards, I could definitely see. I could see maybe 12 touchdowns, so a little bit of regression. But, possibly more receptions, maybe 25 now. So 7 more, maybe 30. Not too much. So slight regression. I know last year he was 275 fantasy points. I'm ballparking him 230, so that is 40 points, but that comes a lot with the touchdowns. I'm expecting 4 touchdowns less, so it's a lot of points right there. 24 points. So it is not who I would have expected. I know a few other teams were looking at him. I know Sarah was considering him at 3. I think this is a relatively risky pick just because Henry relies so much on rushing, but I know the offense is based around him. I'm a little hesitant, though, just because of his injury history. I know he missed a game last year, and he's missed games in the past, so I'd be a little bit worried. I'd make sure I would find his backup. I'd find his handcuff and have him just in case, but not bad for a first pick. Very safe pick. Risky in the sense that I expect regression, safe in the sense that I know he's going to get a lot of workload. So, yeah, not bad. Second round. So second round pick. Andre was basically almost right in the middle. You have the 6th pick, so in the first round, so this time 8th, this time 9th pick in the second round. So he took Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley. I feel like it's funny that you're down on like Matt Ryan and the Falcons, and yet you've drafted Todd Gurley. It's kind of like how you're always down on Julio Jones, but again, you drafted Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley's an interesting case. So Todd Gurley was the number 1 fantasy running back the year you won a championship. He was the number 3 fantasy running back the year after. Last year was the 14th fantasy running back, and he got cut by the Rams. So now he's with the Falcons. He is the lead back. He went to the University of Georgia, so he's from Georgia. I like Gurley. It's hard because last year was tough. Was it the Rams' offensive line, which wasn't very good, I will admit that. But it's also, Todd Gurley is not exactly the healthiest man. He got run into the ground those couple years, and now he's got an arthritic knee. He's openly admitted he has an arthritic knee. His yards per carry last year went below 4 yards per carry for the first time in his career, 3.84 yards per carry. His yards per touch went down on yards per catch, which was like 4.2, so low on that too. He missed a game, so he was hurt for only one game. They kept him relatively healthy, but his workload, I think he only had 3 games with 20 or more carries. Most games, he was getting like 15. I know the Falcons have said they want to give him 15 to 25 touches. That's the ideal. I know the Falcons' backups are not very good, which are Ito Smith and Brian Hill. So they've had a hard time filling running back since, they had Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman, and both guys were healthy. So that's going back like 3 years, at least. But Gurley is tough because, I believe in the Falcons' offense very much so. I think they're going to be in a lot of shootouts. And I am hopeful that they use Gurley more as a pass catcher than a runner between the tackles, because you want to keep him healthy for your playoff run. And it's worrisome because you're afraid he's starting to break down. We're obviously on the decline with him just because the high was so high, and he's not going to be that number 1 fantasy running back. I just don't think he'll ever get that workload again. I don't know if he can hold up with that kind of workload again. And that's okay. It's tough because, we're drafting, middle, second round. I will say he was better probably than, what was left on the board. So I like the pick in the sense that we doubled up on running back. It's important because, running back got barren fast. So, again, safe pick, even though I'm a little concerned about the injuries. It's kind of like with Henry that way. I think we're on the decline again, but he's in a new place. He could acclimate. It could be a solid year. I have a hard time believing he will break 1,000 yards rushing, but I could see 850 yards receiving or rushing. I could see 400 yards receiving, so 1,200 yards total. I could see maybe 9 touchdowns between the two. So that's good. That's a top 15 back, and that's what we want. It's just a matter of him staying healthy, and that's the hope. But I don't love the pick, but I don't hate it. It's probably the best pick on the board at the time. So relatively safe in that sense. Third round. So third round, one of the infamous triple running back teams. So this time we took Jonathan Taylor. Now personally, I'm very high on Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor obviously got a lot of work in college. I want to say over 800 carries, maybe 900 even. I'd have to check, but it was a lot of carries at the University of Wisconsin. And he was only there for 3 years. But Jonathan Taylor's now the presumably number one running back in Indianapolis. I think Indianapolis has the best offensive line in football. I know they weren't great last year. Marlon Mack was in and out of the lineup. Jacoby Brissette is a below-average quarterback, unfortunately. I don't think he can get you to the playoffs. I think he's more like a 7-9, 6-10 kind of quarterback, which is, I mean, still better than some guys starting, but whatever. But Jonathan Taylor's not used a whole lot in the passing game, so I think there's still a role for like Nyheim Hines, who's not very good anyway, but I digress. So they drafted him in the second round. From a rushing standpoint, he is... I mean, I said that I thought DeAndre Swift is the most talented back in this class. I think Taylor's the best pure rushing back. He's a lot like Derrick Henry in that sense. So it's funny, we've taken a very heavy rushing back, and then we took a pass-catching back now in like Gurley, and now we're taking another rushing back. So it's interesting changes. But, yeah, so he ranked fourth in the nation with 3.7 yards a carry last year. He ran a 4.39, which is pretty fast for a running back, especially one at 225 pounds. Big concern is, again, didn't catch the ball much. I think he had like 9 drops and 68 targets, so that's a lot. And then he had 18 fumbles in his career, so that's like six a year. So that's quite a bit too. Obviously, there's still a role for Marlon Mack. Obviously, Nyheim Hines is there. I think he's going to take the role over eventually. He reminds me a lot of last year's Devin Singletary in that sense. I don't think he has the outside speed of Singletary, but I think he's got the power inside of Frank Gore, kind of. So I could see 800 yards. I could see maybe 250 yards receiving if they give him like 30 catches and like 8 touchdowns. So not too far off from what I just said for Todd Gurley. Like maybe a couple hundred yards less, but hey, that's pretty good for a third-round pick for a running back. And it's true. I mean, I was thinking about taking Jonathan Taylor before I went double wide receiver. So yeah, no, he's pretty good. I don't know. I'm surprised quite a few people did not take him towards the end of the second round. Maybe not the third round. There were some good picks at the start of the third round, but in the second round, those are some bad picks. But yeah, no, I mean, it's going to take him some time to get complete hold of the backfield. So that's the only thing. I don't know if he even gets 200 carries just because it's going to take him some time. But I think Marlon Mack's probably going to get hurt at some point. He'll take control of that backfield. So yeah, this pick is a good pick for third round. I mean, he's a little bit worse than Todd Gurley, but we just went triple running back, so another deep team at running back. So, yeah, fourth round, this might be the pick that I like the least in the draft for you. And this is Amari Cooper. I know you've had Amari Cooper. You had him last year. You signed a 5-year, $100 million deal, but really it's just a 2-year, $40 million deal. The last 3 years are all voidable, which I don't think they're going to be paying him $20 million a year by then, but we'll see. Sure. So, yeah, he had his 4,000-yard year. I mean, he had his career best year in receiving yards, so 1,189. He had his most touchdowns, 8 touchdowns. He had his most fantasy points, 169. He was the 10th best receiver in fantasy. Here's the rub. We took Amari Cooper in the 4th round, and I have a difficult time because Michael Gallup was taken in the 6th round, and there's not much difference between the two, to be honest with you. In fact, Michael Gallup led the Cowboys in targets, so he actually got targeted more. And Amari Cooper is really, really, really boom or bust. Like, there were, I want to say, like, 3 games where he had 1 or 0 receptions last year. And then, there's some big games where he has, like, 11 receptions, but it's just really inconsistent. I can appreciate, wanting to gamble on someone who's really talented. I can appreciate that their new coach, Mike McCarthy, will want to throw it more. But you're essentially saying that you're trusting in Dak Prescott now. You are tied to Dak Prescott. You have taken Dak Prescott's number one receiver. You're hoping for a 1,200-yard receiving year from him, and you're hoping Dak Prescott has a very good year in order to utilize Amari Cooper well. That's what you're saying with this pick. I don't know how much I buy that, and that's why I'm hesitant about this pick the most. I think Cooper's really talented, but I think Michael Gallup's really talented. I think their first-round pick, who's also a receiver, CeeDee Lamb, is really talented. I picked Ezekiel Elliott, who's really talented. Their offensive line's one of the top 3 in the NFL. Maybe I take the Colts and possibly the Eagles, though they just lost 2 starters. So probably the Cowboys are the second best offensive line in football. I think Prescott is average. Yeah. You're saying Dak Prescott might be above average because you need him to be above average because you can't have those 0 catch games from Amari Cooper. You need Prescott to feed him consistently to win. And I don't know how much I believe that. That being said, it's okay. I don't love him as your number one receiver, but I think he'll get his 1,000 yards. I think he'll get 7 touchdowns, so a little bit of regression, but not much. It's just very difficult for me to see him breaking into the top 10 receivers again. I think he's more of a top 20 receiver, so maybe 15, 16, and that's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. So I just don't love the pick just because I'm not in love with the player. I feel like Michael Gallup is relatively the same player, and Michael Gallup I could get 2 rounds later. So, yeah, don't love it. Next pick, though. Next pick I do like. We took Devonta Parker, who finally had his breakout. It took him a while. So we've been waiting for a Devonta Parker breakout forever. It feels like forever, man. Gosh, I know the Dolphins are bad, but it's taken 5 years. 5 years for this guy to have his breakout. Finally have over 60 receptions. He had 72. So, yeah, no. Devonta Parker had his breakout year last year. I remember games in Week 17, Game 16 for the Dolphins. Dolphins beat the Patriots, and Devonta Parker put the business on Stefan Gilmore. All right, Stefan Gilmore won Defensive Player of the Year last year. He had no players last year who went up against him had more than 50 yards receiving except Devonta Parker, who absolutely gave him the business. 137 yards against him. He was a monster. However, Devonta Parker's breakout comes with a caveat. And the caveat is, basically, he was great after Week 9. Why? So that's the second half of the season. Why is that important? Well, he was great after Week 9 because Preston Wilson, his compatriot, the number 2 receiver on the Dolphins, actually led the team in targets. So he had more targets than Devonta. Then he tore his ACL. Then Parker just started getting fed. So he started getting double-digit targets almost every single game. And he was the number 3 receiver down the stretch. So it's difficult. I don't know if he's going to get that kind of the Dolphins are in such big transition. I don't know if he's going to get that type of play. I think they gave him a big old extension, but it's tough for me because it's just was it a blip? Is it real? How much do we buy into it? I'm buying. I will say I think Devonta Parker's always been a talented player. I think he's only needed opportunity. The Dolphins, I think, are getting better. I don't know if he'll have as big a huge monster season as he had towards the end of last season where he was just a beast, a top 3 receiver in fantasy. But I think he is a lot safer than, I would say, Amari Cooper, who's Mr. Boomer Bust. I think the Dolphins are getting a little bit more pass heavy. I think they're trying to develop their rookie Tua Tagovailoa, who will take over the starting job at some point in the future, probably this season, maybe Week 7. So while I'm hesitant about it, because I don't love Florida teams, I think Parker is a good player. And I'm hopeful that Fitzmagic or Tua can continue to feed him the ball. The Dolphins have needed a quarterback since Dan Marino retired, so 20 years, man. 21 years now. So I'm thinking maybe 1,000 yards, maybe 6 touchdowns. Hopefully Preston Wilson doesn't take too much of the target share now he's back, but I like the player. He was the number 11 receiver based off the back half of that season. And I'm hoping he stays healthy. He's another guy I'm worried about the injuries, but we've been waiting for his breakout, waiting and waiting, and I think it was. I think last year was his breakout. And even if that's his ceiling, I mean, that's a high enough ceiling that I buy it. This isn't like a Keenan Allen kind of pick or a Stefan Diggs kind of pick where I'm just like, nah, or a Sterling Shepard where it's just like, nah, I feel like the guy kind of had his breakout already. I feel like this is his ceiling. If that's his ceiling, like, that's super high. That's like almost borderline build your team around guy. I don't think he's that, but to roll the dice and see if he is super interesting. And, well, again, I don't believe he's that. I still think he's really good. I think people are sleeping on the Dolphins. So, yeah, I like that pick. It's weird to do a weird back-to-back like that. I don't like Cooper. I like Parker. So, that was a weird little turnstile. Round 6, took quarterback. So, we took Russell Wilson. Wilson was probably second to Lamar Jackson last year in MVP voting. He was real close. If Lamar Jackson didn't have his breakout year, he probably would have been a little bit closer. I mean, I don't even really know what to say. I mean, it's Russell Wilson. He was the top fantasy quarterback through the first 6 weeks. He was like really, really good most of the season. I mean, he was, well, I want to say like the number 3 quarterback in the end of the year. I mean, he was a little up and down towards the end of the season, but that's because they were trying to run the ball so much because they're dumb. He averages top 3 in passing touchdowns every single year for the past 3 years. So that's like 33. He's got DK Metcalf now. They signed Greg Olsen. They get Will Dissly back. I still don't love the run game, but we'll ignore that. Do I think he has big a year as last year? No. Just kind of like a theme for this team. Like all of these players I don't feel like are ascending. They're either kind of like at their level or on the decline. I think the thing is, though, their level's higher. But I could see Wilson possibly getting an MVP this year as well. It's kind of up and down. So, yeah, I think we're getting like 33 touchdowns passing, and I think we're getting a couple rushing touchdowns to throw in there. I think we're getting 300 yards rushing. I think we're getting, I don't know if we get another 4,000-yard season just because, like, again, Seattle does not throw as much as they ought to. But I could see, like, 3,700 yards. I could see that. So, yeah, I mean, this is a solid pick. I mean, I suppose, it's not bad to take a quarterback. Robbie just took Deshaun Watson. I don't love taking quarterbacks, but, this is like the, 5th team to take quarterback, so it's not bad. He's a good player. Yeah, most of the time you notice I'm just saying it's not bad. I mean, it's just consistent. I think, I don't know if any of these guys are on the ascent, but again, they're pretty level. I think Wilson's pretty level. I think Parker might be ascending. I don't really know, but I think he's pretty level. Cooper's weird. I don't know what to do with that. Taylor's ascending. Gurley's down, and yeah, Henry. I guess it's here. Anyway, moving on. We took our tight end. We took Jared Cook. Some people are really high on Jared Cook. Some people really low on him. I'm not really sure. I mean, he had 9 touchdowns last year. I think that's serious touchdown regression. I don't think he's getting that. Plus, they signed Emmanuel Sanders, and it was like his best fantasy season ever. I don't know if he's a starting fantasy tight end again this year. He was like the number 6 fantasy tight end last year. But, I mean, he's super efficient. I think he has a role. I just don't know if he's going to get as many touchdowns. Tight end's so flat that, like, he's probably a starting tight end in our league. It's just I don't think he's getting as many touchdowns. Again, this is another player where I feel like we're not ascending. We're kind of, like, at the peak. The peak's higher, but it's not. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Good player. So, Yeah, I mean, I could see like 700 yards, 6 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns, so a little aggression just on the touchdowns, but not much. Saints offense is great. So after that, we start triple running back. We haven't taken one in a little bit, so it's round 8, so let's go get a running back. We took Tony Pollard. He's the handcuff for Elliott. I would know I have Elliott. I mean, do I like Pollard? I mean, I like Pollard. I think he's talented. I know Mike McCarthy has talked about, like, trying to get him a little bit of a bigger role. I know he's a dangerous guy, but how much work we think this guy's going to get? Like, Elliott was suspended once upon a time for a few games. Other than that, he hasn't missed a game. So, like, Robbie kept Tony Pollard on his team all last year for nothing. Nothing. Okay. So I hope you don't do that. But, I could see, like, if Elliott were to get hurt, Pollard's a top 10 running back, so obviously, that's worth something. I think he's a very good player. I think he could probably start in this league. He's definitely better than some of the starters around the league at some places, Jacksonville, but he's just kind of stuck here and as a backup. I mean, he showed good talent. I don't know, I'd trade for him. It seems like you kind of need a wide receiver. But, yeah, I don't know if I would have taken him just because I would have wanted someone who can actually contribute to my team. He's more of like Trey Fonder, or you're hoping, Elliott gets hurt kind of thing than he is anything else. And that's kind of why I was kind of hesitant to take a quarterback so high. I would have taken another receiver or something in round 6 and then kind of wait till now to get a quarterback. But can't always get what we want, I guess. So, I mean, Pollard's a good player, though. So I can't hate on it. I was looking at getting him possibly, too. I got stuck with Sonny Michel. So, someone took Keyshawn. Oh, yeah, Rich took Keyshawn Vaughn. Yeah, so people reaching for running backs. Next round 9. We took LaShawn McCoy, so running backs. I mean, no one knew Fournette was going to end up here. I mean, Fournette didn't know he was going to end up here. Jacksonville's tanking. It's clear as day. I think he has a role in the Bucs. Do I know what that role is? No. I would consider possibly dropping him just because now it's a super crowded backfield because we got Darren Gunawale, we got Ronald Jones, we got LaShawn McCoy, we got Leonard Fournette, and we got, Keyshawn Vaughn. So, we got a lot of guys now. There's a lot of people, a lot of mouths to feed. That's 5 running backs, even if Dari's just a special teamer, and even if we put Vaughn basically kind of off to the side and just give him a redshirt year almost, we're still having to have 3 running backs, and I don't know if McCoy's ever going to... I don't know, I feel like they should trade Ronald Jones and do something with him, but I would be hard-pressed to see LaShawn McCoy getting 100 fantasy points this year. I don't know if he gets 500 yards. Just because, I don't know if he's going to see that kind of usage with Leonard Fournette there. I just don't see that. That's really the thing. I mean, do I know if Fournette's going to stay healthy the whole year? No, but even if he doesn't, there's still Keyshawn Vaughn, there's still Darren Gunawale. I don't like Ronald Jones, but ignoring him, I still like the other guys too. So, I don't know. I don't really see... Unfortunately, with Fournette there, all of the fantasy value with LaShawn McCoy is just not really there. I know he's a running back, but it's not. It doesn't really. It doesn't move the needle. So, moving on, we took Joe Schobert. I had Joe Schobert last year. He's really good. He was the number 1 tackling machine last year. Number two linebacker in fantasy, and he's now with the Jaguars, who suck. So yeah, starting probably one of the best linebackers in our fantasy league. So, good player. Took Leighton Vander Esch, who gets hurt all the time for the Cowboys. I mean, if he doesn't get hurt, he's a good player. I just hope he doesn't get hurt. So, yeah, we'll see. I don't really like taking defensive players, but okay. Took John Johnson III, the Rams safety, so he gets a lot of tackles when he plays. He only played 6 games last year, so we'll see. I don't know. if he's going to stay healthy. Dante Fowler Jr., again, defensive players are a dime a dozen. I'd probably consider getting a different defensive end like Jadeveon Clowney instead of Dante Fowler Jr. just because I don't really know how. I don't know. He's in Atlanta now. I don't really know how they're going to use him. I mean, I liked him. I liked him in St. Louis. I didn't like him in Jacksonville. He's a former number 3 overall pick, but I don't see big sack numbers in Atlanta for him. Took Will Lutz in the 14th round. I hate taking kickers. But sure, he's super accurate. He was number 2 at his position. Will that stay the same? I doubt it, just because kickers are so volatile. Took Anthony Miller. There we go. It's a good sneaky little pick. So Miller, full-time slot man in Chicago. I think this year possibly could be his breakout year. I think he could have like 60 receptions, 700 yards, maybe 4 touchdowns. The hope is that Nick Foles is the quarterback. Because if Foles is the quarterback, Miller's going to get some play. If Trubisky's the quarterback, then we're going to be probably pretty miserable. But, I mean, I've heard good things out of camp. In the second half of the season, he was a top 20 wide receiver because Trubisky was so desperate. And Trubisky can't throw outside very well, despite Allen Robinson. I think some of Allen Robinson's targets. He was third in the NFL in targets last year with 154 targets. I think some of those targets are going to Anthony Miller, and I think rightfully so. I think he's a really talented player. So I think, he had 85 targets last year? Yeah. That's a lot. I know he was like a top 25 receiver in the second half of the season. He didn't make the top 50 for the whole season, but the beginning was really rough. I'm hoping he's on the ascension now that Trubisky's not the quarterback. We took Sami Watkins next. That was certainly a ride because he gets hurt all the time. If Sami Watkins is healthy, he's a good player. If he is not, then he's obviously not worth having on your team. You're hoping he gets like 5 catches a game because then he's getting like 5 catches, at least 50, 60 yards, and probably sneaking in a touchdown occasionally. He's an occasional flex. It's more a question of can he stay healthy? He's never had a season where he's been a top 20 fantasy receiver. And he hasn't been a top 40 fantasy receiver in like 5 years. It's been a long time because he gets hurt so much. So, I mean, week 1 was him going gangbusters after Tyreek Hill got hurt. But he's definitely, like, he's the number 2 receiver in the Chiefs offense. I mean, I really like the Chiefs offense, but, like, Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's higher on the pecking order. Travis Kelce's higher on the pecking order. Tyreek Hill's higher on the pecking order. He's got to stay healthy. I mean, I think maybe the Saints are good enough, or I keep saying Saints. Maybe the Chiefs are good enough to get him some play, but I don't know if that's actually true. We shall see. But I like Sami Watkins. 16th round, I mean, can't really beat that. We took Smith, so handcuff for Gurley, makes sense. Gurley gets hurt. Ito hopefully shows something more than he did last year. What he got? Like 20 carries into nothing. So we'll see. And then we took Dede Westbrook, who I think is going to get cut by Jacksonville on Saturday because he's been hurt most of training camp, and Jacksonville's getting rid of all of their talent anyway. So, big picture. I know most of the picks I say, I don't really love this. I'm not super high. But the thing is, I will say about this team has high floor. This team is a good team. It's a relatively, like I mentioned, like Brian's team, I found to be really safe. I think this is a safe team in a different sense. Just because, like, I really, really like the running backs. And, like, I know injuries are going to happen and this team can move up. Would I have done everything that this team did? No, of course not. I was not looking at Amari Cooper. I did not want Amari Cooper in the 4th round. That was not going to happen. So, usually I like to take high risks. This team, I mean, he's the high risk, but I possibly would have even taken Juju just because I think he's got to have a better season than last year. He was terrible last year, but hey, that's big risk. So, maybe you didn't want to do that, but you did fill your 3 running back holes probably among the best teams in the league. despite me not loving all of them, like Gurley's definitely worth the second-round pick. Taylor's definitely worth the third-round pick. Obviously, Henry's worth the first-round pick. So, like, I can't really argue with that. I can't argue with Russell Wilson being, like, a top 5 quarterback. I can't argue with Devonta Parker after how hot he finished last year. I mean, I can argue with you about Cooper, but really, what are we talking? Like a number 2 receiver on your team? I mean, I like Cook. I think there's more regression there as well, but he's a starting tight end. So, like, the thing I don't like, I would probably say, is the bench, because, like, you took some defensive players in rounds 10 through 13, and then you took a kicker, so the bench is not good. Like, Dede Westbrook I'd cut. I would consider cutting Watkins because he gets hurt all the time. I would go hunting for bench help, because the bench is bad. The bench is not good, but the starters are. And the one worry I would have with Gurley, you have Ito Smith. I'd probably be looking at getting Derrick Henry's backup, his handcuff, wherever he may be. Darrington Evans, I believe is his name. So I'd be looking at getting Derrick Henry's backup. But the team overall is a good team. I know I haven't been like super high on the team, but I mean, you take it all in, it's one of the better teams in the league. So if I had to give it a grade, probably a solid B, and I'd put him about 6. So 16, not like top 5 teams in the league. There's some really good, really, really good teams, but it's still in the top half of the league. I think this team's obviously a playoff team. This team might win a championship, just like when he won a championship, he was the 6th seed. So yeah, lucky number 6. You drafted there. You end up there on the draft review. You won a championship from there. So, hey, you never know. I like the draft though. So, yeah. I don't have too much more to say about that. Maybe next year don't take Cooper. Don't make it 3 for 3, please. This year is going to be nuts. It was already going to be nuts for COVID, but I don't know what the hell Cooper's going to do. But yeah, other than that, I don't have too much else to quibble with. Go find Derrick Henry's handcuff. Yeah.